Good afternoon. Welcome to the Board of Supervisors for our special meeting on our budget. And I'll start off by asking for a roll call.
Supervisor Foy. Supervisor Long. Here. Supervisor Bennett.
Here.
Supervisor Zaragoza.
Here.
Supervisor Parks.
Here. And Supervisor Bennett, will you lead us in the pledge?
Hand over heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we can now go to agenda review. Do you have any changes for our agenda? All right. Well, we also have an opportunity for public comments on anything other than the budget or even on the budget. Do we have any members of the public who wish to comment? Okay. 60 people out there? No members of... Okay. At this time, then, we are going to go ahead and have our opening and introductions. We're here, obviously, to conduct the Ventura County hearing on the adoption of the fiscal year 2016-2017 budget and receive public testimony. Here's the time schedule for events. We are taking public testimony now, and then starting at 6 p.m. this evening, we will also have public testimony, and we will continue having hearings until, on a daily basis, until we have sufficiently reached all the public comments that we can and have made our decisions. So for the official proceedings, the public hearings on fiscal year 2016-2017 recommended budgets for the county general fund, fire and fire protection district, watershed protection district, water works districts, and other non-general fund activities under the control of the Board of Supervisors is now open for public comment and comment from department and agencies. And I'll go ahead and I'll turn it over to our CEO for his comments and a presentation and recommendations and your staff report.
Okay, thank you, Chair Parks, board members, and county leadership team. We'll get right to it, and I'll turn it over to Catherine.
Thank you. Catherine, for the record, good afternoon, Chair Parks, CEO Powers, and members of the board. For the record, my name is Catherine Rodriguez, the county CFO. So I'm going to start with our slide presentation. The order of events, we have the opening instructions, and then going now to the department presentations, which that was already been presented, and then I think at the end of this session, you will then call out for those departments those going to be presenting, and then continue that 6 o'clock p.m. we'll have a budget deliberations, and then the adoption of the budget resolutions, and then finally the board comments. Just for the budget guiding principles, we use the board county strategic plan to make sure that our budget aligns with those strategic plans that we have for those objectives and those focus areas. Our revenue projections is guided to be realistic and conservative, that any disruption with, right now, most of our revenues is reliant upon federal and state funding. So any disruptions from those sources, the departments are committed to making adjustments accordingly in alignment with your board policies. We also have openness with the community. We wanted to make sure that it's transparent. And our principle also is to make sure that we deliver county services efficiently and effectively. And lastly, we have fiscal discipline, that this would result into a long-term fiscal sustainability. Our budget process started. The first is to calculate the general fund forecast. So we get our different assumption rates. We have it in the budget development manual. And then we then set our net cost target budgets according to the discretionary revenue, primarily from our property tax and sales tax. It's about 85% of that general purpose revenue. So we develop the targets for each department. And then we meet with the departments one-on-one, and we go through all the requests and balancing what we can afford according to the revenues and the net cost. followed by department presentations. Those were done early this year in March and April and May. And then we have a capital project. And the preliminary budget, a comprehensive presentation was done on June 7th. And today we have the final budget hearings. So highlights and key budget data. We have the recommended budget is a total of $2.166 billion. That's $121 million or 5.9% increase from 2015-16. Our general fund appropriations is approximately $1.055 billion, and that's an increase of $48 million or 4.8% increase from 2015-16. Our general fund general purpose revenue is $378 million. It's an increase of $12.8 million or 3.5% increase from 2015 and 16. And that's most of it is coming from the property tax revenue, approximately $10 million, in conjunction with the increase in AV assessment value of those properties, and that yields a 3.5% increase. The general purpose revenue allocation increases. Of the $12.8 million increase, $8.1 million or 63% is allocated to public safety. $2.7 million or 21% is allocated with health and human services, and $2 million for all of the others, which is the general government, other general fund, environmental balance. So you can see public safety is being 63% or $8 million. Though it has the biggest chunk of the general purpose revenue, public safety does not have much of options from revenue sources as compared to health and human services. Most of their cost of services, approximately 47% of that is actually back into revenues, but then there's a shortfall because of the options that they have for revenue capturing. Whereas health and human services, they have 21%, again, because they have a greater source of revenue. Approximately 90% of their costs and services is reimbursed from intergovernmental and other charges for services. This budget also has highlights an increased demand for services. There's more demand out there, and as we have said, the budget is tight. There are more demand than services, but we try to make sure that the budget is structured, and this in fact reflects the budget being structured in reflecting those increase in demand for services. Our FTEs now has 8,982 positions, 150 FTEs or 1.7 increase from 2015-16. Our general fund FTEs has increased by 87 to a total of 5,317 or 1.6%. And our non-general fund has increased by 63 or 1.9%. The result of all of this, as I was mentioning earlier, it goes into budget structurally balanced. Core services is maintained with some focused increases. Our reserves increased, and I'll have to speak to it as I go through the slides later on, and they're not used for ongoing operations. We have 100% funding of risk management and workers' comp, general liability insurance. We have approximately $140 million in cash in the workers' comp and $40 million in cash at the general liability. So we're 100% funded. And we continue to invest in infrastructures and technology, and we'll go through those investments. And we have attained highest credit rating recently. Our assigned fund balance to revenues ratio, the county goal, or which is based on the government financial officer's recommendation, is at 15%. So far, we're still at 13% level. In value, we are at the highest point as of 2016-17. Exhibit A, which is the post-preliminary budget adjustments, and we have given updated worksheet and submitted to the clerk of the board, reflects an increase in appropriations of $51,880 in general fund, and the non-general fund has $7.3 million. The increase in revenue for general fund offsets the increase in appropriations of $51,880, and then the non-general fund is $2.4 million. net increase in FTEs, and now I'm going to go through them, is 1 for the general fund, and non-general fund is 1.2. So in general fund, we have a 90,000 allocated for farm advisor. As we have received more information from the farm advisor, there's a request of an additional 90,000. Their net county cost allocation right now is $300,000. And for every dollar that we spend for the farm advisor, the return is 7. 1:7 is what they contribute. So this $90,000 is expansion of a research and diagnostic lab facility. The source of the funding is going to come from our special accounts and contribution. Public health, this is one of those late grants that came in, which is for the Thrive program and the California Children Health Initiative. It's also grant funded, so it's offsetting revenue and services. The $373,000 is just an accounting correction. Proposition 64 and SB 90 is being corrected to offset the increase, the decrease in the revenue, decreases the salaries and benefits as well. The public health, I'm going back to public health, the 1 FTE is for the senior RN that they have added. Now for the non-general fund, we have $200,000 for library. There's a request for a neighborhood branch library, which this would be considered to be a computer lab. It will be located in East Ventura, and it will be a 24-hour operation for every week. And it would require 1.2 FTEs, 2 positions for a librarian and a technician. And then the following 3 items are just rebudgeting or reviving the budgeted amounts for a public works road fund of $3.2 million for additional paving project. And for the water protection district, consulting and maintenance of the Sycamore Dam project, and then $91,000 for the county service areas 4 and 14 for Oak Park volunteers, approximately $25,000 for that for public outreach and education for policing program, and utility for street lighting. These are all going to be rebudgeted. As a summary of investments, activities that were actually reducing or affecting our assigned fund balance during the year, we have made all these investments. And primarily we have the RMA general plan update, that's a $4.4 million. And then since it was prepared, it was 1988, and this is to get us to our new general plan. And then we have mental health, we have crisis stabilization, the Nyland Acres, of $450,000, field building, which is across the street for HCA's office for the administrative positions. We have the government center and JJC solar project, a $5 million contribution for a $10 million investment, and VCFMS upgrade. We have $1 million in animal service and medical examiner of $1 million, a total of $20 million. So this is the status of reserve for assigned and assigned fund balance. So as of 2015-16, we're projecting, these are the items that were set aside for total assigned. There is $27 million, and then for the unassigned, it has a balance of $131 million. Projected for 2015-16, there will be a surplus of $8 million in our budget. And so that surplus will be allocated accordingly, $2 million for the program mitigation, increasing it to 7.1. And for the election for this November, an additional $1 million will be issued to the elections department. That's $1 million. And so our total assigned will increase from $27 million to $30 million. And our unassigned fund balance is going to grow by $5 million to $136 million to get us to the 13% level. Our recommended fund balance allocation, this now reflects the post-preliminary budget for 2016-17. As you can see, the unassigned is $136 million. The assigned will be at $30 million level. And restricted will be the same, 4.5, and non-spendable is at 3.2. Which is going to grow to $173.8 million. Our goal is that we will have 15% of our general fund appropriation, which is $1.54 billion. So that goal is $158 million. As projected for 2016-17 to produce 13%, we have $136 million. So the total budget of $2.166 billion, most of it is on general fund, 49%. And then we have VCMC at 25% of $542 million. And we have Fire Protection District at 8%. And Watershed, 54%. That's actually, it's a rounding 3%. It's about 2.6%. And then Water and Sanitation is 3%. And then the county service areas at 178 or $8 million. This is just a table to show where we are from the prior year to this coming year with the post-prelim. So the general fund is going to grow by 4.8%, and non-general fund is going to grow by 6.9%, and the total budget will grow $121 million or 5.9%. General fund appropriations divided into program areas. We have public safety, which is 41%. Health and Human Services is at 41% as well. And then we have the other, or 80 million, 8%, and general government of 6%, and the environmental balance at 4%. The general purpose revenue, to where the board has most of the discretion on that revenue, 60% is the allocation for public safety, or $229 million. And we have Health and Human Services of 12%, or $45 million. And the general government, $40 million. And then that's 10%. And then the other general fund is 56 or 15%. The general fund budget has grown from $1.6 billion in appropriation to $1.055 billion, which is $48 million or 4.8%. And then we have direct revenues, 640 to 676, or $36 million increase. Our net county costs has increased by $12.8 million, and I have actually have given you the information how that was divided up among the different areas. For third quarter 2015-16 budget update, we're on track. As I said, there's $8 million fund balance surplus. We have labor negotiations that's upcoming. Approximately 10 contracts will be expiring on this fiscal year, 2016-17. And recently, we have issuance of short-term borrowing and refinancing of long-term borrowing. Of that, we are, from the pre-funding of retirement costs, we are estimating a savings of $6 million, less the interest rate, which we have 0.65%, lower than among our peers. And then we have estimated savings also for the refinancing of $1.3 million. And we have, lastly, we have the FMS year-end processing. We have more work there that needed to be done, and we look forward to it. And then we have the general fund multi-year forecast as of May 2016. Main assumption is that the property tax is going to go 3.5% flat from 16-17 through 18-19, 3.5%. And then on 2019 and 20, the property tax increase will be at 3% assumption. There's a little gap on 17-18. It's approximately $4 million, and 18-19 is $3 million, along with 19-20. It's a conservative estimate, and hopefully that this gap will then be resolved as we go through the years. Every year we have challenges, and okay, go ahead.
I'll let you catch your breath for a second, Catherine. Thank you. Just a few points on challenges. You know them well, but just to summarize them, rising pension costs, particularly due to market performance. So 2 years ago, Becerra Fund earned about 18%. Last year, 2%. And you know our projected rate is 7.5%. So that's a concern. And then this year, year to date, is about 0.2%. So these last few days of the fiscal year are going to be important, and we'll be particularly watching what happens in Europe with England's vote this week. So just something for us to keep an eye on in the future. Also, we have more dependence on sales tax than we have in the past. Prop 172, of course, but also safety realignment, and that tends to be a little more volatile than property taxes. Increased realigned programs, and that can be good because we think local government does it better, is more in touch with the local community, and that's good. On the other hand, we have to make sure that the state is providing enough associated funding to do it, and sometimes they've fallen short, and I think the most recent example of that is safety realignment. Funding is not what it needs to be for us, so that's an additional challenge. We're watching the economy as it slows. The usual ones that we've had is fluctuations in income tax, and this is, I think, kind of drives the point home. 1/3 of the state's revenue is based on the highest 1% earners. So something that's very, very volatile. And of course, that's very true of the Mental Health Services Act funds, the tax on millionaires. So those are just ones that we watch especially closely because they're so sensitive to the economy. An old favorite, payment delays from state and federal funding. At least they're consistent, so we can plan on that. Prop 30, just so you're aware too, so the increase in the sales tax is going to expire in December of 2016, and the income tax December of 2018. So that's just to put that on your radar. Frank Chow from our office did highlight, though, that for safety realignment, there is a constitutional protection for that funding, even when Prop 30 expires. So just to put that out there. And lastly, the road fund, and you've heard Public Works talk about this, to keep their pavement condition index at roughly 75 or so. They need to continue to fund at a certain level, and they've been doing well, but it's depleting at a rapid rate. So in the out years, in the not too distant future, it would require some general fund support. Positives, as we said, the property tax tends to be stable, particularly in our county. We don't have some of the big fluctuations that you'll see in the Inland Valley, like San Bernardino or Kern or so forth, where they go down a lot and they go way up. Ours is pretty steady. Our folks are great at pursuing grants and managing them. The Affordable Care Act, while it's been some challenges, certainly financially, it's been a net positive. Great cost management from our folks. Performance outcome driven on revenue. More and more of the revenue that we get from the state and grantors is going to be dependent on our performance. They want the funding to follow performance, and the good thing is, because of our Lean Six efforts here at the county, the whole leadership team here is very much embraced that, so it fits very well with their normal management approach. I think a lot of the infrastructure investments that have been made are going to start to show some dividends, particularly in IT, the financial management system, the electronic health record, just the mere fact of having social workers out in the fields with iPads, which makes them more efficient and so forth. The county's creditworthiness, and just our workforce, just the great work they do every day, and the fiscal discipline they have in running their shops. So,
in summary, due to the collaboration of employee efforts and diligent management, efficiencies and innovation, an example of that is through our Lean Six and our undying support from our SEC council efforts of FY fiscal year to date of $2.8 million. And we have our strategic workforce management. Basically, it's the reducing costs and enhancing revenues and lower the overhead, and managing the cost and inflationary increases in our salary and benefits and services and supplies. And of course, that's due to your board direction and support. We're able to maintain all of these wonderful deeds that the county has in trying to result into a structured, balanced budget and the maintenance of service levels, expanded service levels in safety, health, and social services, and continued investment in infrastructure, technology, and the people. And that concludes our presentation.
The last thing I would say there, just to tag on to that, is, Catherine, as I mentioned before, that there's some uncertainty in terms of the economy in the state and so forth. So I very much appreciate the departments setting some hard targets, and that creates that fiscal discipline. That makes it more conservative, and I think it's stronger. And they might make some, or they might not get all the way there, but they have a great track record of doing it. 6 years running positive surpluses at the end of the fiscal year, and right now, knock wood, it's looking like that for this very fiscal year as well, as $8 million positive. So again, I think they're being very thoughtful and cautious as they budget going forward, not adding a lot of only really focused increases, particularly in areas where there's state funding or grants or based on billings and collections, that kind of thing. So a lot of the increases in the enterprise funds. And so I think by being conservative in our revenue projections and our cost management, continuing to invest, and building our reserves at the same time, it's going to position the county to weather some of these uncertain factors and thrive going forward. So happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Supervisor Zaragoza.
Catherine, I know you mentioned on page 9 the third quarter report budget update. I just want to thank staff again, for the short-term borrowing and refinancing terms. Our credit rating is just outstanding, I just got to share that. That's going to save a lot of money, and I want to thank the staff and the whole team for getting us in this excellent credit rating with Standard & Poor's and Moody's. And it's important because you can see the savings up there, the $6 million and $1.3 million per year on the long-term savings. So I just want to commend staff and Mr. Powers for that rating. It's just excellent rating, and to thank the whole team for that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have also, we are looking at some adjustments. And at this point, Exhibit A is the adjustments. We're accepting them for discussion purposes only at this time. And these are recommended by the CEO's office. Okay. And we have those before us, Exhibit A. And we, as far as agency department presentations, I know we've received them as we have gone the last month or so, probably close to 2 months now.
Yeah, that's right.
So I don't anticipate that we're having more agency presentations.
Well, maybe we'll put the slide up, just the last slide.
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry.
There we go.
I went backwards.
See if any of the departments would like to present. There
Yes.
we go. Open it up.
So this is an opportunity for your department to speak again if you haven't already, or to speak if you have. And we list them there, and as always, Mr. Goodwin will always take that opportunity, right?
Yes, here. Good afternoon. I thought probably a good time to have a few more facts than I had a couple of weeks ago, and so it'd be a good time to share a little bit with your board. I also want to say congratulations to Supervisor Zaragoza, Supervisor Bennett, your recent reelection. Congratulations. There are a lot of good things about this county, and a lot of stability, a lot of things, and a lot of thanks to our county exec, Mr. Powers. And this is a pretty complex budget, and it's impressive all the organization that he's put in and what goes into that. So for me personally, this is 1999 was my first year to present a budget. To present a discussion about budget, but also roll. For me, it always comes. Everything comes in June. We've got budget, we've got assessment roll to close, and I have my wedding anniversary. And my anniversary is always this same week of the budget. Fortunately, this year.
Not in that order, though, I hope.
No, my anniversary was the first. My wedding was the first item. Yeah, that happened quite a few years ago. So that's Wednesday. But it was interesting is in 1999 the roll closed at $50 billion, and this year it's going to be probably about $123 billion. So there's been a substantial increase in assessed value over that period of time. The other thing is the fine staff I have really had to push hard this year to get things done. And just to kind of give you a perspective, I want to mention it's sort of like a construction analogy, if I can use that. First you have to develop a plan and get your architect and do your plan, and then you come up with some financing, and that's, of course, where we meet with Mr. Powers and his staff to develop the financing for the coming year. And then you go through a sequence of assessment issues and the various property types, which, of course, range from one thing to another. But then the staffing, the progress, and then you complete it and deliver it. So this year, a couple of facts I thought would be of interest to you is the land and improvement value actually has gone up more than the entire roll's going up. And that's partially because of the offset that comes from business value changes. In our top 20 assessments, top 20 businesses, only Haas Automation had a significant increase in new equipment purchases. In other words, if you picture it this way, so if a company has, a large company has $100, $200, $500 million worth of equipment, that equipment depreciates every year just because it's another year older. And so then they have to buy approximately 7% more equipment to stay even. So a lot of our large businesses, their actual assessed value on their equipment went down some. Another thing that's interesting is the exemption picture. We now exempt over $3 billion worth of properties, and that was a little less than $1 billion in 1999. Not counting Homer's exemptions, they're also another $1 billion. But the increase there. So this year we're adding about $124 billion to the welfare exemption, which is a lot of various kinds of properties. The second largest, that exemption for total welfare exemptions is about $1.3 billion. So for various good things like Boys and Girls Clubs to many other properties, that's what their exemptions total. The second largest is hospitals. They have about $870 million worth of exemptions. So like a St. John's, the not-for-profit hospitals. A Los Robles, which is a for-profit hospital, still pays property tax. So those are part of the picture that has to be analyzed, equipment and the value of the properties. So altogether, we're actually increasing our exemptions by about 5.6%. In other words, another $172 million is exempted on property value that way. And then our other big decline was in the area of minerals, trees, and fixtures, which went down about $644 million. So there's a lot of things come into it. The number that you might be one of the numbers you might be most interested in, though, the final number looks like, which of course there's a little bit more to do in terms of computer systems staff has done, but the assessment roll looks like it's going to go up about $4.4 billion, which is about a 3.7% change from last year. So let's see. This year, one of the big things I really appreciate too is partnering with Mr. Berg, Mr. Hintz. Our new property tax system is in progress. IT is a big part of that. County council on contracts. Also, staffing this year. This summer is going to be an important time working with HR to accomplish a sequence of some promotions and new hirings that we need to do to get things in position. And the last thing I'll just mention is appeals. I know your clerk of the board really saw the surge in appeals. Back in 08 and 09, we're running about 5,600 appeals. The thing that's kind of important to know in that area is how the transition of demand is from residential to more complex properties. In 2008, it was about 72% residential out of the 5,600. Now we're running only about 30% residential, and the others all the rural, commercial, special properties, possessory interests, things like that. So back to the financing analogy, that part of the project, I really appreciate the support you're giving us to get our budget in order, to have adequate resources to do the job, and I'm available for any questions you might have.
Very interesting statistics. Can you share that with us, the documents? Or
sure. Right now it's not an organized document. It's just miscellaneous numbers I was pulling together.
Great.
We can make a summary.
Thank
Probably
you.
do a press release, maybe something like that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just a question. Do you put together, from the assessment appeals work, an annual report of the assessment appeals that were conducted and which ones were resolved? And
Okay.
I know that
So-
at one point there was such a heavy workload. There were two boards working. And
Right.
kind of
So we
where-
well, first of all, the clerk of the board is actually the possessor of the schedule for appeals. So I'm a very interested party, of course, but so I don't have a report that I produce on that. I mean, in round numbers, we can check with the clerk and verify quantities of units, but we're under 2,000 per year now in appeals, where it used to be about 5,600. So just to give you kind of a trend.
Hey, Dan, real quick, have we, during the downturn, everybody reduced that property. Are we pretty much, most of those properties now back to their normal levels? And do you have much of that left? I know that kept adding to our increases.
Well, for the most part, that's yes, but there's still a substantial number. We were over 80,000 in the maximum reductions, but we still have probably more than 20,000 that are at some level of under their Prop 13 maximum. Now, some of those are non-residential, of course, a lot of them, but there's under its proper Prop 13 factored value. There's still quite a few that are. There's not much differential, but
So there's not much. So it's not going to be adding to that normal increases, which helped us over the last few years.
I'm just thinking I might have a number that kind of gives you a approximate there. So, so there actually is there's over 4 billion still available to recapture, about 4.8 billion. Think of it this way, each billion is about 10 million in taxes.
Okay. So there's still that can help us with that that piece a little bit if we don't. And then also, we're hearing people saying we're getting to those top levels of housing and lesser selling, but a little more pricing. And one thing about that, because Mr. Powers and Catherine showed budgets in the next year a little bit spaced, but most of your property stuff usually takes a year or two before it catches up on that property tax piece, doesn't it?
Well, everything is location dependent when it comes to value, and so how fast it catches up. So everything's valued as of it's like if you took a snapshot on January 1st.
Right.
We produce a roll now, so you have cycles of appreciation and time, and then you also.
So I guess really what I was getting to is if for some reason we do start to hear, you heard the state talk about be concerned where the future's going, and, but even at that, January 1st, you're going to take your next snapshot.
Right.
And so even if things are turning down, we're not going to see it in this property value or the tax for at least a year or two after that. Probably.
Well, I guess you could say that. Yeah, it's like a year
because we're always
difference.
trailing.
When the first tax bills are collected in December, well, they're collectible in October, but delinquent if not paid in December. So that adds to the value in January. Excuse me, I'm going to have to get some water in a minute.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other questions for Mr. Goodwin?
Just one. Sorry to keep you dry here, but
It's 5 o'clock.
a little bit more information about the assessment appeals. So if we drop from over 5,000 down to 2,000, certainly if almost everybody dropping out was residential, then you would see the percentages go up for business. So are we having about the same number of business appeals today as we were having in 2008 and in 2000?
No, we're actually having more. We're having more appeals.
Actual number of appeals going up. Okay. That's fine. That's a basic question I have. The second half of that question is, what is there a trend in terms of, or a majority, are businesses appealing the fact that they've had their assessment increased and they appealing the increase, or are these businesses appealing that they should have decreases because of some other change, that is out there? Can you help me with that?
There's a lot of dynamics involved. Okay, so you have
no standard pattern out there.
Well, you have office properties one thing, retail's another. So Amazon has changed the retail picture, hasn't it?
Uh-huh.
So you can imagine if you were a Best Buy, right, or I guess a Sports Authority, probably Amazon is the one that killed them. So you have this dynamic going in retail demand for space, office space. You have prime freeway corridor location issues, and then you have secondary locations. When you think about how many people now, their office is their computer, their cell phone, and their company car, right? They don't need office space. So now some businesses do. So there's those changing dynamics. So part of the challenge and the increase is that kind of thing, a cycle that's going on, that's underway in various types of properties.
Good. I'll ask you privately for more details later. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair. Mr. Goodwin, the question I have is the new assessments are done after June or July for the following year. Is that the way it works? I can't remember.
Well, the value notices
The
will
value
go,
notices,
they'll be
yeah.
mailed in July.
In July.
I'll give the auditor the assessment roll probably next week.
So we get a surprise after July, is that what it?
I'm sorry.
We get a surprise after July on our taxes?
Well, there is this one home in Oxnard that's particularly got my attention.
It's
And
2303.
No, so the value notices will go out in July.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Powers?
Thank you, Chair Parks. Mr. Goodwin, so you mentioned that $1 billion translates to $10 million in taxes.
In round numbers. In other
But
words,
not for the county,
1%.
that's for all the special district schools and libraries.
Yes, and that's
Yeah.
distributed among all the partners
Right,
and
right.
all the stakeholders.
Right. And then one other point, too, is there's a couple new positions you saw there. I think about 5 of those are for IT to work on the property tax system here, which is going to save the county substantial money versus going with an outside contractor.
Yes, I got a good plan. I think
Yeah,
we've
very
come
good
up with a
plan.
good plan. Yeah.
And just to thank Mr. Goodwin and his office, because I think we call him at least once or twice a day to get updates on the assessment for the revenue, to make sure we dial in the revenue projection, and we appreciate your support and help with that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does the board have some opening remarks?
I guess that means goodbye.
Thank you.
I guess at first I'd ask if any other department would like to come up and speak. You're most welcome to. Won't bite your heads off. Come speak.
I have a question for combination of Ms. Rodriguez and Barry Zimmerman from Human Services Agency. So
Okay, so we'll go to
I
questions.
thought we were going to call them all out, and I'd do it then, but we'll do it this way.
And could we put the slide back up of all the departments on there, just in case one might come to mind?
And you may or may not, neither one of you may know this answer at this point in time. I'd just like to get it, but I would like to have it next time, a year from now, when we do the budget thing. And that is, we have $12.8 million of general fund, general purpose money increase. There's been a $12.8 million increase, and of that, $2.7 million is going to Human Services. And my question just is, do you know how much the $2.7 million is going to be used for leverage money? And if that's the case, how much leverage are we going to get? So I'd like to, I'd like to say out of that $12.7 million, we put this amount in that it was able to leverage that, or maybe it's going to things that we can't leverage. So do you have that information, either one of you, both of you? Do you agree on that information?
Just roughly, I mean, we can get you the details of that, but just to tell, the net cost increase is leveraged completely through. So we had an appropriation growth of close to 16 million. And so that would be the portion of general fund relative to the $16 million growth.
So are you always able to take the increase and leverage it through, or sometimes does that money have to get allocated to something that you can't get leverage on?
No. For the majority of the budget, it's leveraged. There are some isolated special programs that are 100% general fund, but the majority is leveraged all the way
So
through.
it's fairly safe to say that the $2.7 million leveraged over $10 million.
Yes, it
Got
is.
it.
It's fair to say that.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Supervisor Goza.
Yeah, my comments are very simple. I just want to share with our board and with our staff that I always considered a budget a roadmap. A roadmap that we're going to look at, roadmap that in the future, if we have to take alternative routes or whatever, that roadmap is to keep us in the right path and hopefully in the black, And I think that our staff and our CEO is doing an excellent job in revenues and also in keeping us in our FICO scores way up there. And I personally just want to thank the entire staff for the good work that you're doing. And I think that roadmap is a good roadmap that we're taking now, and hopefully with adjustments in the future in the right direction. So I just want to thank staff. That's my comments at this time. Thank you.
Other comments? Supervisor Foy?
Yeah, but Mike,
Question?
you'd given us this list of positions that were added as we talk about, and there's always a concern of growth, but I think you've been able to detail out some of these, what they are? Maybe we should go through some of those.
Sure. Thank you, Supervisor. I'd be happy to highlight some of them. Because when you look at it on a big picture, it can look like a good number of increases. But when you go department by department, you see it's pretty well thought out. I'll start with Department of Child Support Services. So they're adding 15 staff. But they're adding 15 staff because they're taking on the call center for Riverside County, which is good government. It's a lot of leveraging. It's good economies of scale. It now puts our call center on the same level in terms of volume as Los Angeles County. And it's doing that because the state has recognized that their child support call system is one of the best and most efficient in the state.
So with that kind of situation, so in a sense, Riverside is decreasing, we're increasing. So as overall government's not growing, it's just they're trying to combine.
They're trying to
be more
regionalize.
efficient. Yeah, regionalize,
Exactly.
be more efficient. And
Right.
we're the ones doing that. So it's
Exactly.
not really a growth in the size of it, but just
Exactly.
doing that. So that's good. Okay.
And it's
So that's-
fully funded, correct?
It's fully funded.
Yeah.
And it actually positions us better for just more advantageous funding going forward, because the state sees us as central to the whole county state system, not just our own county. MHSA, for example, there's about increase in 5 senior crisis team clinicians. Well, that's because behavioral health is expanding its crisis team, and in terms of efficiency, and will also save some costs in terms of doing that for children and juveniles as well. Public Works is adding 2, but that's for watershed and code compliance, and for Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency. We all know there's the huge increase in volume of work that Fox Canyon is undergoing. Harbor Administration, they're adding 2. Well, that's fully revenue offset enterprise fund, no general fund cost. VCMC is adding 18.7. Same thing. Part of it's driven by volume. Part of it's driven by reducing outside registry, and 0 increase in net county cost.
So we're just there. We're doing more work. There's more patients coming in, and
There's
also
more.
we're just trading what we've already done before.
Exactly, there's more volume. When you look at just the number of Medi-Cal patients, not visits, but patients in the last 3 years has doubled. So they're trying to keep up with that. The property tax system I mentioned before, there's 5 positions there, but that's to help implement that property tax system across the 3 departments, and it will actually save us money in the long run. Our office is adding 8 folks, but those are really for healthcare agency HR, and that is, again, to right-size their HR staffing, and they're the largest county agency right now, and one of the things we asked Mr. Otten, our HR director, is to look at industry benchmarks and see what should the staffing be based on this number of employees, and that gets us up to the best practice staffing.
Which I think was improvement, because I think we've seen over the time where it's hard to hire, but they were struggling with some of that.
Exactly, and they have to hire, and they need to hire fast, partly because they're 24/7 operation, partly because there's so much private competition for the very same employees that we're trying to hire, like nurses, for example. So they have to be very nimble and efficient. Fire Protection District is adding 9. 6 of those are new dispatch positions because they're going from 24 to 12-hour work schedules, which is the right thing to do. Animal Services is adding 14, which they need given the increase in volume that they have due to the status as no-kill shelter, and counties pitching in to help with that, and the cities are significantly increasing their share as well to help fund those positions.
But I think there's a piece here with that. You're saying we're reducing 20 extra staff help, right? So it's kind of offsetting.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. HCA admin, they're increasing mostly in the fiscal areas, 9 folks in accounting. And again, when you're an $850 million or so budget, you need to make sure you don't that your fiscal staff doesn't lag behind. It's so important. And so those are certainly needed. 2 extra folks in medical examiner. We've talked about the need for the additional investment there. Public health increase of 7.2. Those are all totally grant offset. Many different reasons. I won't go into all of them, but I can see there's a couple of folks for a tuberculosis management program, and that's so important. That seems like sort of an age-old disease, but it's still around there, and there's more antibiotic-resistant conditions that are out there, so they need to be on top of managing those. And they manage over 50 grants at least every year, and they do so extremely well. Mental health is expanding in some areas, including Oxnard and Santa Paula, and that's just straight-up increase in volume. Alcohol and drug. Some of those programs have been realigned locally, so there's an increase in staff of 6. And alcohol and drug just always does a great job of managing their budgets and being very, very fiscally conservative and thoughtful. And human services, lastly. lastly, is 29 folks, and that's mostly children and family services area. And we talked about getting to safe, best practice staffing ratios, which is sort of, in a sense, a public safety investment. And these are actually funding some of those same positions your board allocated in the past. So when you break it all down, I think you can see, and as Mr. Zimmerman said, most of those are leveraged to anywhere between 70 and 80% state and federal funding. So a lot of return on the investment. The general fund investment helps get us very favorable staffing. So that's a quick summary.
No, I appreciate that. And, we see all the different people coming in and out, so people need to, I think the public should understand where this is going and what they're doing and why. You talk about public health. Well, you don't usually hire public health unless there's a need for something going on out there. So that's good. That's good to hear. And then some of this was just trading people around from full-time, part-time, and like the Riverside thing, we're doing very well here. Riverside says we'll contract with you. That's a smart thing to do. Okay, I appreciate that.
Comments? You good?
Madam Chair. I'll have just a few comments. One, I appreciate the good work of the CEO's office, all the analysts, and working up with the departments and the managers to really accomplish bringing this forward, and the challenges that went with doing that. I look back, I've now in my 20th budget, and in 1997 it was just a little over $970 million. So it has grown, as have I, as has the county, and it. What I appreciate in the good work of all of you in bringing a budget like this forward is that we worked hard a few years ago on the mission and vision and the strategic plan, and it now has become that foundation for measuring up all the work that we do to serve the residents of this county, and the complexity of the work that we do in the programs that come as being an arm of the state from the legislative actions gets more complex, if that's possible, but it is. As we know with HSA and talking about leveraging dollars, but just when you think you've got 2 steps ahead, you get a new piece of legislation that says, let's get out of the group home business, and what does that mean, and the ripple of all of that. And so all of that's not necessarily captured in this budget, but we know we have to be prepared for it. That's the challenges that are ahead. And certainly in law enforcement, everything that's occurred with the realignment. We've I think through the great work of the CCP, that, again, we've been able to stay a couple steps ahead, but we also know there's continuing pressure pushing down to local county government to, again, get folks off of the incarceration track and more into the rehabilitation track. So those pressures will continue, but I think that the accomplishments should be acknowledged, and through this process of the last couple of months, we've had the opportunity to do that. As a county, we're in great position. We're solid. We've been structurally balanced for at least the last couple of decades, certainly more so today than we perhaps were when our reserves were so nominal. Our ratings with the Moody's and Standard & Poor's continues to go up, and now is in its strongest position of a county of our size, and that again is the good work of both the planning, the execution, and the cooperation that has to occur in a government of this size, and regionally, as we often work with our other partners in the cities and special districts to accomplish some of the goals that are needed. The big challenges ahead. I'm sure we'll talk more about those at another time, but I appreciate the clarity of this budget, and I appreciate as we use the transparency word that in our mission and vision and work in the county, that is an important word, one that we do honor and try our very best to continue to have process improvement and gaining the trust of the voters and the trust of the residents, who that's really, we're there to serve them, and it is through that we're able to accomplish a quality of life in this county that is second to none, and it is all your great work. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Long. Supervisor Bennett? No comments? Well, I do want to congratulate Catherine. This is your first, right, budget? We used to have Paul Dursey doing this, and it is such a quick snapshot we just got. But I know there's a lot of complexities and a lot of work that went behind it, and your good team. And just it's nice to be in a position while we are not having a huge influx in funds, we do at least have a steady increase, and that's allowing us to, for example, increase public safety beyond the formula that we established. And you just realize how essential something like that is. I mean, it really affects our quality of life, having some of the best, safest cities in the nation, and also having such good law enforcement. It does ripple down, and it does help our quality of life. And one of the things that we're seeing, for example, in Los Angeles County is a lot of impact associated with people with mental illness, and that they're in the jails. And what we're doing here, I think, in Ventura County is exemplary, but it's also considerable hit on our budget, looking at everything from putting together the mental health rehabilitation center that we will be able to have, the first secure facility since they closed Camarillo State Hospital. That's essential here. Looking at the Children's Crisis Center, being able to have that for children, something that was definitely a missing link here, but how essential that is. And then the Todd Road Jail expansion, being able to receive those funds, that we are certainly going to have to staff it, but that's specifically for people with both physical and mental illness. So I think that really goes to addressing something that is huge in our county and separates us from other counties, the fact that we have the ability to fund that. And those things are some really big ticket items. Really happy to see that we are in a situation where, while there is increasing demand, that we are able to work creatively and within our budgets to be able to meet a lot of that demand. So that, I think, is a good thing. And looking at the reserves, I think it was 2003 when I came on, it was structurally imbalanced, and we were able to establish a precedent that we are going to go and do what is recommended and get to that 15% reserve. And I think we have been working diligently for obviously many years to get there, but that really helps not only in the terms of having that rainy day fund, but also, as we saw, as Supervisor Zaragoza is pointing out, that it has helped us with Moody's and helped us with our bond rating, and that has helped us save potentially $1 million is what I was hearing. And you think about what that allows us to do here in Ventura County and what amazing things that we have done, from $500,000 set aside for Boys and Girls Club, trying to get it at the beginning when kids need the help and keep them from going into hard times and into crime and other things that Boys and Girls Clubs can keep them out of, and helping them with their school. And it's great that we have been able to do what we have in Ventura County. And I think this is another stellar budget. And it really is wonderful, too, that we have formed this strategic plan. Every department has in there what it is that their goals and their missions are, and performance standards, so we know how to rate them. And that's something that we can all share in discussing. Is this the standard that we want to measure? And that also helps us in seeing that the funds that we are allocating go directly to achieving those goals. And I think it's a great way of budgeting. It's long-term, even though we just do budgets 1 year at a time. That's the strategic plan is long-term, so it's good to have that in place. I just think this is an example that government works, and I'm just delighted to see that we are having the ability to continue to meet the demand that is out there to do what we can, and that is because of this great staff that we have, the great plans that we have in place, and being able to fund them. So this budget does that, and I'm glad that we are able to do that. I know we have potential more testimony this evening, and so I know that's when we'll have our supervisor comments too on that. But at this point, it does look to me like we have, as you were saying, a solid budget.
Madam Chair, if I could, I just want to point out, not everybody's going to be back here this evening, I'm sure, and just to stop and reflect on the fact that we have over 8,000 county employees, and we're all on a team trying to meet all of the responsibilities that we have to the citizens of Ventura County. And essentially, you people are the leaders of all these various teams out there. And when you get a team and everybody pulling the same direction, there's almost no limit to what you can get done. And unfortunately, there's no limit to what needs to get done. But when you think about all the challenges that we have, but it is your willingness to put your own interests secondary and the team, the mission that we're all committed to first, that is really the key to the success of Ventura County government. This budget shows it, the leadership from the top shows it, and everything that you people are doing is absolutely essential. Just we have to keep remembering the mission, the needy, the people that need the safety, the people that need all of the things that only county government can do. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mr. Powers, do you have something to add?
First of all, thank you, and agree to recognize the team here. This is what makes it happen. 26 different departments and complex services that they provide. I did want to just thank, because we have a good number of folks here, Catherine on her first budget, through K-Man, our assistant CFO, all the budget analysts for the work they've done. Department heads and their fiscal teams, a ton of work. This meeting can go by pretty quickly, knock wood, but it doesn't. I don't want that to mask the ton of work that's gone on for the last 6, 8, 9 months to get to this point. And that's all these folks here and some who aren't here today doing that work. Jeff Berg and his team, the whole Audit Controller team, and the complexity of a $2.16 billion budget. You can just imagine what it takes to try to gather that information and the credible way that they do it is indispensable. Our partnership with our elected officials, also indispensable, and your board support. So, thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Okay, so the process again is at 6 p.m. this evening. We'll come back and take public testimony. After the end of public testimony, we'll deliberate and take some, quote, straw votes as necessary, if necessary, really, for general fund budget units and for non-general fund budget units. And then we have the opportunity then to adopt detailed deliberation adjustments, exhibits, and resolutions. If there are any, we also have the ability to carry over if we need to the following day. But I think we have to have it all done within 14 days, 14 calendar days. So at the end of this afternoon, we will just come back here at 6 p.m. and continue our deliberations. And at that point, we'll hear from the public if there is any. I think the fact that we don't have a lot of public input right now may be indicative of the fact that we have really put together a sound budget and listened to a lot of people. So at this point, I'll go ahead and shall we adjourn or continue to 6 p.m.? We'll go ahead and continue the meeting to 6 p.m. and thank you all for being here.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the meeting back to order for the budget hearing of June 20th. We started with the 1:30 budget hearing. Now we're going to open the public hearing for 6 p.m. I just want to share with you that Supervisor Parks has automobile problems and she's cannot make it. She's over in Thousand Oaks, so we're going to continue. And so our next item we have here is public testimony that might be allowed at any time during this proceedings. Is there any public members that like to speak at this time? Hearing none, then Mr. Powers.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Zaragoza, board members, county team. So, Catherine, maybe just do a summary of the budget for the evening session and then go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll start with the strategic, the budget process. We've gone through this already this afternoon, so I'm going to cruise through the next slide, which is actually this slides are going to line up with the strategic plan as one of our guiding principle for the budget process. So first of that is the focus area for public safety, and $8.1 million or 3.7% general fund contribution goes to our public safety departments, namely the district attorney of 6.6%. Their prosecution workload increased by 30% in trials, 20% criminal filings, and a part of the increase in their budget is also to reflect the the MOA for market-based adjustment effective June 2016. Also is the public defender, which is $1.1 million or 8.1%. 80% of those criminal filings are appointed to is filed and is appointed to the public defender. Also reflects the market-based adjustment effective on June 19, 2016, and the sheriff of $5.9 million or 4.5%. It's an increase of effective of August 28, 2016 and February 26, 2017 for the Deputy Sheriff's Association, and also to finance some of the body cameras. As you could note, the general purpose revenue has increased by 3.5%. However, the contribution to them is at 3.7%. Continuation is for probation. They show a decrease of $0.8 million. However, that is primarily due to 13 FTEs. That was part of the closure of the work furlough in September 2015. There's going to be the establishment of day reporting center in spite of that, so that will be a cost savings. And the sheriffs assume the electronic monitoring, so expanding that to cover some of that. And then we have the $1.5 million Pay for Success for BSCC grant, and that is primarily to reduce recidivism, and a continued $2.4 million general fund contribution for indigent defense. Next of our strategic plan implementation is focus area for community well-being, and we have $2.7 million general fund contribution increase to health and human services, $2 million increase to HSA. There's 33 new positions added in filling vacancies. And for the last 2 years, there's the increases that we have 116 in 15-16 and 132 in 14-15. So, and then we also have the CalFresh waiver phasing out to the state, which is $575,000. And IHSS public authority increase due to annual MOE. There's going to be a $12.50 increase comes July 1, 2016. And notably is the caseload increase in participants in Medi-Cal. Since the Affordable Care Act implementation, there's 97% increase. The Area Agency on Aging has $150,000 general fund contribution, and as you can see, the home delivered meals for senior nutrition program is $190,000. There's a lot of meals being delivered. This is the additional responsibility as March 2011. You can see the gap from best practices. The green is the actual and the blue is the best practice standard. So as years go by, the gap between the actual and best practices has been aligned comes to September 2015. So there's a huge adjustment in social workers for those time period.
I could just say, so I look at that chart. If we look back and then as more studies were shown that we were just kind of out of whack with that in the sense that we didn't have enough people doing the workload. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I know that, part of this whole thing is we have this increase in some of the employees that we've added to it, but part of it was to get up to some of these standards that we might have been lacking over the years, and new information came out where do that. And it's been interesting because I think it's been very helpful. A lot of the stuff, we haven't heard some of the incidents and stuff. So it's just good to see those kind of charts. Thanks.
So Mike, you want to add some more, Jim?
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor. Yeah, thank you, Supervisor Foy. I wouldn't say it was out of whack so much as it's just a challenging environment. Yeah. And as listening to HSA, Mr. Zimmerman, the social workers, and really hearing their needs assessment and looking what the best practice standards were and saying, maybe if we increase the staffing, we lower those caseloads, and now what we're hearing is it's having a real positive impact. They can do more social work. They can spend more time with the families and the children and de-escalating and just safer. It's really kind of a safety issue for some of the most vulnerable kids and seniors in our community.
Additionally, those general fund dollars gain us millions of dollars, other match dollars that
there's
come
great
with the
leveraging.
programs, leverage dollars.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That was a win.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you talk about core mission of Ventura County, this is one of the core mission is those kids that are in trouble, et cetera. So it's
Thank you. Catherine.
Continuation for community well-being, we have significant efforts, implementation of the Affordable Care Act. We expanded the levels at the VCMC clinics. We have 10% increase in there from 597 to 654,000 visits. And we have the medical expansion, insured and insured. This is a good thing. It actually has dropped our uninsured population at VCMC by 3%. And we have a good chunk of this population for VCMC from the Gold Coast Health Plan, 31,100. So more than 65% is allocated to VCMC. And we have a general fund contribution increase to the medical examiner, $575,000 to address some of the admin oversight. And of course, we have the mental health services, the Lawrence Law, the outpatient treatment, and foster care home, foster care reform along with the KDA. This is just to show you the increase or growth from the post-ACA from 112,000 to 221,000. Continuing the community well-being for public health services, we have medical waiver 2020, $44 million. So this is a huge amount of revenue that's going to come into our system from the waiver 2020. And then opportunity there is the whole person care, approximately $74 million for the next 5 years, along with the dental transformation initiative, which is approximately $75 million for the next 5 years as well. Undocumented children, full scope Medi-Cal. The state is estimating 250,000 newly eligible children. This is approximately $4 million to the health centers. Along with that, we have animal services of 200,000 increase. Most notably is the 14 FTEs that were added, but actually they were just to convert those per diem positions into full-time positions. And one of the big accomplishments is the contracting and renegotiating with the cities for their billing. Homelessness, big part of the board's priorities. We have 250,000 homeless prevention and rapid care. We have the homeless management information system that's going to create a database for it will be implemented in July and will be shared among the cities. And then we have the 2 million continuum of care, the HUD funding, and whole person care I mentioned earlier. And then we have the RAIN Transitional Living Center for $1.7 million. Emergency Solutions Grant, that's $500,000. Oxnard is going to produce $200,000. The state is $150,000, and the county is $150,000. And then we have the Project Hope temporary hotel. This is in the sheriff's area that they granted vouchers through March 2016. And then we have VCMC for recuperative care for hospital discharges for homeless patients, and not $1.4 million health care for the homeless program grant. Approximately 10,000 patients are being seen in our clinic system. Now, this is to reflect the number of FTEs of 150 for this fiscal year. And you can see that, I don't know if you can see it, but it tells you exactly where each of those FTEs are added into each different groups. And so we have the Health and Human Services in there. We have ACA Med Exam. This was already been mentioned by Mr. Powers early this afternoon on what the purposes for those ads for each of those different groupings. And so the most notable thing about this is that though we have an increase of 150 FTEs, we could say that the county is really growing. It's growing, and in the types of the services that we're providing it there, we want to make sure that this growth, no matter how many positions they're well vetted for, and so we vet through the additions of FTEs, we want to make sure that they have met the criteria to make sure that they have revenue backing into these FTEs that are being requested for additions, as well as if it's required and if it's going to create some efficiency in the county, and therefore each of those FTEs that are here.
Supervisor Bennett, yeah.
Supervisor Bennett.
Oh, I didn't want to interrupt. Okay, I've interrupted now. Right? So I just want to take a look at that. At the enterprise fund, so the turquoise to the far right, or green, or whatever color you call it, that VCMC 18.7 FTE increase. So those are enterprise fund increases. So they're we're recovering those with increased revenue from Medi-Cal and all of that, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and then the other big increase is in the Health and Human Services area. You see 29 positions under Human Services Agency. So I'm going to ask Barry if you wouldn't mind coming back up, Barry. And could you go back to the slide that shows us finally narrowing the gap in terms of social workers from 2011 to? So Barry, this shows 2011 and then where we are now, where we've narrowed this gap. What was the difference in terms of? What's the difference that you're seeing in terms of the quality of care that people are getting, the quality of government we're able to deliver with this?
With the proper caseload, the social workers are able to do the full complement of services there. So they can take the time to meet with the family on a regular basis, those type things, where otherwise they were meeting those requirements, but probably not to the level we would like a best practice to occur. So meeting our regulatory requirements with the court was the minimum standard. Now that should be the floor, and we should do the full scope of social work practice associated with those cases. Now, with the caseload into more acceptable range, we're able to institute those trauma-informed practices and those type things.
So the fluctuation that we see there, why is
the fluctuation's there because
blue?
of the way the caseload, that's the actual caseload dynamics that's occurring. So based on the ratio of staff and the cases that are coming in.
So even in the best of circumstances, we weren't getting caseloads down from 2011 until 2015. We weren't getting caseloads ever to even on the best days when we had the lowest caseloads and the most staff and everything.
That is correct.
Right. What about employee of productivity and employees sticking with us? Is our turnover rate changing as a result of this? Are we able to retain better people? Any of that?
Yeah, we seem to have retained a high-quality workforce here. The majority of our workers now are master-level individuals, which prior to that we did not have. The overall morale is extremely high, where I know in the years we've been in this boardroom when the union was here, and the morale was not as high due to the workload conditions that were on the high workload and caseload standards. So we're very positive momentum. As you know, we're going through a big reform right now in which the staff are able to participate fully in that reform and giving their input because they're able to exercise the full range of their duties. So right now, I would say it's in a very positive direction due to the ability to manage the workload.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
Barry.
Yes.
Real quick, at the end of it, I think the bottom line result is what's happened in the families and stuff. What have we seen? I mean, what's the result?
Yeah, and we showed it when I did the CCR presentation. We're showing that more kids are being housed and kept with their biological families, which is one of the primary goals. Right. And so we're seeing trends in that effort to see them instead of coming into long-term foster care, they're being managed and maintained with the right services in their biological homes. So we're seeing those trends. We're seeing some efforts now due to the ability to interact with cases earlier, that we're able to intervene with services so they don't have to enter into our system. So actually the caseload is leveling off in that respect. We have greater foster homes that we're able to recruit and maintain and support. And, relatives, if you see the caseload over time, we have more relative placements than we have in the past. So those are all positive directions due to the investment that has gone into the system.
So I guess at the end of the day, then we can look at that investment. The taxpayer is willing to say we'll invest in this. It has given them a return that has been positive for those families, and hopefully long-term for those kids and everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Once a child enters into our system, the cost skyrockets. And so if we can keep them in a home-based family environment, the relative costs are much, much less than going into more of an institutional care.
Right, and hopefully their lives are better and everything
Yes,
else.
absolutely. Long-term outcomes that we know are improved into that circumstance as well.
Good.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Barry.
I'm sure that's where a lot of our employee account went that we're talking about over the years, too. Yeah.
And so this is also the breakout of the 8,982 FTEs for each of those different groups. So you'd see Health and Human Services and Public Safety, 2,441, 2,092 for public safety. Next is for good government and financial stability. We have increasing unassigned fund balance, as we have talked about this afternoon, of 13%. We have service excellence, and third year of raises and market-based adjustments. We have also ISF modest rates. GSA has 3%. Years before that, we have really controlled the GSA's increases. They didn't have any increases at all. ITSD, 0.6%. General liability insurance has no increase. Nevertheless, it's still fully funded. And then we have $8.6 million of $13.3 million budgeted for the development of the Integrated Property Tax and Collection System, or PTAX. And we have 5.2 ongoing general fund contribution to debt service or facility investments, approximately $15 million in debt, and then the $5 million of which is going to be coming from the debts from the general fund contribution. And we have maintained our high credit rating. Here is a little diagram of where we are in terms of the credit rating increases, how many, from 2013, Moody's has upgraded us to the second level, and then recently we have an upgrade, again, the highest level for Moody's. So S&P and Moody's is at AAA. And those are the comparisons for each counties of where they are. And if you would notice, San Diego is at AAA, same rating as us, but they don't have a county hospital. Unlike those other hospital counties there that has county hospital are lesser than our rating. Next is our good government, still continuation of financial stability demonstration of 157,000 decrease for general government, but most of which is coming from the auditor controller due to the completion of the upgrade of the old VCFMS system. That's a $1,025,000 reduction. We have the county clerk recorder, expanded services and increased hours in the East County. And along with that, we have mentioned that there is a set-aside in November election of $1 million. The CEO's office is $900,000 and $350,000 budget preparation for the system projects for our budget preparation system. And we have the community choice energy of $275,000.
Catherine, just real quick on the, Ms. Rodriguez, excuse me, on the HCA HR. So those are 7 positions. They're in our office, but they're really working for a healthcare agency and their personnel department. As I mentioned earlier this afternoon, that's really to reflect the increase in number of employees and the number of demand on the system in terms of visits and so forth. So
right.
We wanted to get to the best practice staffing ratios and HR
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Catherine, probably your deal for this budget preparation system.
Yes.
You get a little explanation?
So that's our budget system. Actually, it's just we have more customization that we need to do, like for a best budget book that, someday we would have a budget book excellence award. That requires more information that we we don't have recently in terms of a comparison of the prior fiscal year's information in there, more customization, easier access, and so therefore we are requesting a $350,000 budget preparation system customization of the
Right.
whole
But
budget.
with that investment, we're going to get out greater understanding, greater ability to make decision-making based on real budget, even better numbers than we've had and even have now.
It's a better tool in that we are able to at least extract information from it, as well as putting information in there, so it's easier to access the information, as well as for the board's openness and transparency. This is one way to accomplish that.
Great. Okay, good, thanks.
If I might, just one other, I think, clarification on the $275K for the CCE. That's counties and cities sharing together. We put in 50,000,
Right.
and this is just the first step of the feasibility study.
That's
Whether or not this county goes forward, joins in, what our next steps yet to be discussed by the board and others.
That is correct, Supervisor Long. So they're still in the first phase one of the
Right.
feasibility study, and so this would be an estimated cost of phase two that would likely come to your board sometime September, October. But as you say, we've already mentioned it to the city managers. The cities did, most of them pitched in last time, and we talked about us sort of collectively sharing that cost for
Right.
phase two with them as
And
well.
what was the
That's an
cost for the
estimate.
cities then? What's the cost for the cities?
Well, that's what we're going to work out.
Okay.
And for East County, it's glad to see the clerk is doing more services down there. It seems like that pilot
Yes.
that he tried worked, and there's more and more people doing that and just didn't have to drive. Great.
Yes.
That's good.
Next is a focus area for environment, land use, and infrastructure. We have the $4.4 million for general plan update. For this 15-16, we have already distributed $2.4 million for that project. And then Resource Management Agency as well has $125,000 increase in general fund contribution and $95,000 for Public Works. And then we have required maintenance to county facilities at $8 million. We have currently $41 million in an inventory of items that we needed to put some maintenance on, and this budget covers $8 million. So it's going to be years of trying to catch up with those maintenance. Next is 561 general fund contribution for capital projects and GSI program and so forth. This you already have seen so far. These are the in our preliminary budget presentation, we have presented this in general fund. These are the major capital projects. The mental health housing unit at Todd Road Jail is a 64-bed. We were given in May 2016 an award, and $6.1 million, which is 10%, is set aside to provide for the county match for that project. And then we have the PTAC system, the mental health rehab, and then the storage facility. All of the evidences will then be moved here. Those items will be moved here as soon as this facility is completed. It's close to the Todd Road Jail. And then we have $10 million for 2 solar projects for Government Center and then Juvenile Justice. This is actually the county has put in $5 million. It's supposed to save us $750,000 for each location every year. And then we have the medical examiner's facility, one of the neatest state-of-the-art type of a Lodox radiology equipment that could do scanning in 13 seconds. And then we have the capital projects accomplishment. And so here again is the lists of, notably is the VCFMS, $15 million, which has already been implemented. And then we have Nyland Acres. And then the 10 million voice over VoIP program, which is about 100 sites in the whole county that could now experiencing that improvement into our telephone system. And we have our non-general fund, a big project for the new fire stations, 3 of them, Newberry Park, Fillmore, and Ojai. And then we have the hospital replacement wing. It's at 80% completed. And we hope that its first patient is going to be seen around February 2017. And then we have Santa Paula Hospital Seismic Compliance Project. And we have the $3 million Harbor Administration Building, which is they're currently on a trailer right now. And then we have the general fund. This is still being evaluated for the animal services in Camarillo of the investments that's going to be put out there. And then we have public safety, electronic content management. Yes.
Michael.
Just a quick question for you, Ms. Rodriguez. On the hospital, once it's open, obviously great for the patients and staff. From a financial standpoint, what's the impact once it opens?
Yes. Most significant benefit for that is coming in from our cost reimbursements. There's a depreciation expense that's going to be claimed as well as an interest rate. So between the two, if we're, let's just say 100% reimbursed, then our mortgage interest is about $16 million. So we could get that depending on the number of the disproportionate share population, meaning Medi-Cal and Medicare. So we would at least grab about 90% of that will be recouped by the hospital through cost claiming. So by opening it sooner, it gives us a leverage for claiming those costs sooner as well. And then, on the non-general fund, these are the recommended priority projects. We have the fire station, Camarillo, for design and construction of $8.5 million, and 40 aircraft storage hangars for the Camarillo Airport, a $5 million investment, and then the network expansion project is still being evaluated. And so we have recommended priority projects. We have the housing for needy individuals to end homelessness, healthcare facility in Santa Paula, and then we have the PeopleSoft upgrade for county's HR, payroll, and benefit system so that they could talk to each other better. Conclusion, budget is a living document. During the year, we have weekly board meetings to where your board, according to the priorities, can be adjusted upward or downward. And we also have quarterly updates to update you to where we are in terms of our spending is at in terms of the budget versus the actual or projection. And the county remains structurally balanced. For the last 6 years, the county has had surpluses. And then we have service levels generally maintained or expanded. And that reflects a long-term sustainability. And of course, contribution of the county workforce has played a big role in terms of getting this structured, balanced budget. Summary, collaborative efforts from our employee, diligent management, and of course your board direction and support resulted in a balanced budget, expanded levels of safety, health, and social services, and continued investments. And that concludes my first year of budget presentation.
Thank you, Catherine. Excellent presentation. It's really, really great. You were going at 100 miles an hour, but you did a good job.
I just got to get my ears to catch up.
Is there any questions of
Well,
Catherine?
I just got one. You said GSA have a 3% raise. Wasn't over the last few years we've had no raises? Is that new guy? Is that what's causing the problem? No, that was, Catherine, really good information. I think for the public who watches this, they get the opportunity to see where exactly you detailed out where every bit of the money's going. So it's not like we're spending $20 million here, we're spending. At least people get the understanding. They agree with it or not agree with it, but at least they know exactly where it is. And I appreciate that openness and clarity of where the money's going, why we're doing it, what we've done with it. So I think that's very important.
Thank you, Supervisor. Any other questions of Catherine? Supervisor Bennett?
I just have one question for our CEO, and that is, Mike, could you give us a feel for, we've had balanced budgets, we're in stronger shape, we've got more money in reserves, et cetera. I would like to, can we encapsulate or capture how much better service are citizens getting from us today than they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? Can you? I mean,
yes, I can.
Yeah.
You're trying to say he's a better CEO, or what are you trying to say?
But can you encapsulate that in any way? I mean, no, it's a difficult question to try to frame an answer to.
Thank you, Supervisor, for understanding the difficulty of it. I guess I would say that it's the culture that your board has established, that our management team out here has established of continuous improvement. So that's we would expect that we would be better. And in 6 years from now, we'll want to be better than we are now. And I think, it's been the folks that have been here before us and building that. And I think it's just sort of a continuation of that momentum that we've had here as a county culture. We work well together. It's sort of we take it for granted a little bit, but it's not the norm from what I hear in a lot of places. We really do work together across agency lines. I think that's better services. That we're focused on the patient, the customer, the consumer that we're working with, and I think that makes the county stronger. And we're certainly, with our Lean Six program that your board has so much endorsed, we're continually improving and measuring our improvements. And I think, when you look at and we're trying to really focus on your mission with a strategic plan. You really helped, I think, clarify for us where you want us to focus our efforts and our resources and our investments. And I think that's been a big help for us. And sorry, go ahead.
If I could, not so much how or why, but in terms of, we had the conversation with Barry up here. Children are getting better service now, right? How about healthcare? How about public safety? How about, are there areas where
Sure.
we can clearly say, hey, there are significant improvements?
Behavioral health.
Sure. I would say in social services, I think Barry described it very well. I just think having more staff and the high level of high trained staff that they have with time to do their work is better quality care. It's safer. You have staff with higher morale doing the work that they're trained to do, and that's better for families and children, the most vulnerable families, children and seniors, who are also very vulnerable as well. I'd say in terms of health care, there's no question. You saw the number 3% of uninsured. Well, it used to be they would work to get the number down to 17%, and that was a good number, because the number coming into the ER uninsured was 40%. So drive it to 17% was amazing. So get it down to 3%. With the Affordable Care Act and eligibility, you've got more people getting care earlier. It's more preventive care, it's early diagnostics and better case management. So you're going to have better outcomes. So I just think, and it's been a real strain on the system, but it's expanded to meet those, and it's continually expanding in terms of providers and hours and so forth. So I think that's been a big improvement. I think safety realignment has been, it's been a huge challenge for our safety departments and our health departments. But I think what you see as a benefit from that is that our folks do it really well, and they look at the root causes, and probation and the sheriff and DAPD. They know how to work with behavioral health to get people into services. So you look at the root causes and you try to reduce recidivism, and I think we're seeing that now. They're struggling because of Prop 47 and some other things, and of course there's more challenges. But I think that's sort of when you're looking at health, social, safety services, you see a lot of those integrations and a lot of improvements in those areas, because all those good people out there are doing great work.
Thank you.
And also, I think, Michael and board, I think we have a lot of volunteers that are helping us out, a lot of CAGs, that really help us. Behavioral health is a good example, and we have our planning commission. We have quite a few volunteers that really help, the county, and our management team is, bullet point number 2, diligent management, I think, helps tremendously. So I just want to share that. Okay, any other?
Yeah. This budget to me is it's got two sides to it. There's some really good stuff, some great work that went into it, hard work by the staff to make it work. There's only so much money, and you got to make it all work within there. And at the same time, we stuck another $5 or $8 million in reserve, trying to be as financially stable. We heard the governor come out with his consultants saying things could get tough in the next few years. So we're trying to be as prudent as possible, which is good. On the other side of it, I look at it saying, it's tough that we have what Barry's talking about, this keep expanding. I just got something, I don't know if you guys saw that thing from Gold Coast that was talking about 1 out of every 2 children on Gold Coast under 5 years old. It's tough. We need jobs. We need all the things. And so this budget has to take in a lot of those other areas that the number of employees that we talked about has expanded, because we're having to do more things, which is, tough. We wish the economy was better and things we're doing, even though we hear it's good. We're not seeing 100% of that. But I think what we're doing inside here is to try to manage what we have to do here well. And I think what you said, the taxpayers are investing this money. We heard Barry talk about the outcomes of some kids' lives are better, and the family's able to have enough people to get those families where kids are with their, some blood relative or something, which is great. And then even find great foster families. I mean, those are all good things. We want to see that happen. It's a tough thing, and I know Supervisor Long said that, this budget was different years ago, and it is different, but it's got a whole different components to it, I think, than it did 10 and 15 years ago that we never had before, which is tough. And it's, there's reasons. You see a lot of issues. You see a lot of the decay of the family that causes more of this issue. Drug stuff that's going on that drives more of these people. The sheriff has to deal with different things, the mental health stuff. It's tough, and this grows because of some of those issues in which we wish we're doing. But I got to say that, being as somebody who hates to see that stuff, but I got to commend the people who do the work here. They really have a heart for that work and are doing whatever they can. And I know that with Catherine and her staff and all the people, they're putting pressure on everybody to try to find ways to control every dollar, because as this gets bigger, when it takes a little bit of a dip, that dip is at a much bigger numbers, and it's harder, and a lot more people are affected with all that. So I got to commend you for all the hard work you've been able to do to put all this together. But we still live in this society it's getting tougher, and this government seems to be doing more things that it's tough. And so hopefully we'll see some of those changes happen, and we'll see more jobs showing up, and people get their kids off some of that. That'll be great, and those parents can feel good about that. But as we're here, we're doing it. So, like I said, there's two sides to it, but I got to commend that the CEO and his staff have just said we're going to have a balanced budget. We're going to put money away. We are going to be prepared for the future, and we don't know what that future is going to bring. So I'd be happy. I know you need 4 votes, but I guess I'd be happy to vote for it.
We're not there.
But I told that, but Leroy said you only need 3. So
Mike, you want to add, Michael?
yeah. Anyway, but commend you for all the hard work, Catherine, and all your whole staff and everybody together.
Supervisor Long?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, again, thank you to all of our great management team, all of our workforce in the county. Yes, our numbers have gone up, but the county has grown as a great place to live and work and play. And sometimes that live, work, and play needs help for programs that aren't picked up by private sector, that are done by government for a variety of reasons. And the thing that I think we've done so well over the last couple decades is to really look internal to see how we can develop our best practices. And now I think we've achieved such success. We are the best practices that other folks look to. Removing those silos is a constant effort, and should be, because the more we work well together across the lines of profession and goals that we set for the work product, the better off we are for the residents we serve. A child doesn't care necessarily if it's who's coming to help them and give them a safety net, and whether it's human services, behavioral health, or our wonderful medical system. They just want to be supported, and that's what we're measured by, how well we treat our children and how well we help our seniors. And I think that we've become very good at grants. The grants page in the budget was, I didn't count all the pages, it was page and page and page of all the grants that you successfully go after and we compete for, and then we excel in. And that's business today and tomorrow and into the future. So it's all of those things. And I said earlier about the public's trust is really earned by, one, being successful out there in the community because they want to see that we're taking care of the most vulnerable, and 2, by being as transparent as we can so they can go online and get all of this information, either in the fast, rapid read of Ms. Rodriguez or in the volume of the old school book I have here in front of me. The details that's in there talks about every department's goals for themselves and success and accomplishments they've had. So the public has that opportunity to be as informed on that as they wish to be. So it is that trust and transparency, and our private partners are important to us, and we have many tables that we sit at as board members and the CEO with the private sector to engage with them, to help to leverage dollars with them, as we do with our Regional Defense Partnership as a partnership, as we do with the Economic Development Collaborative as a partnership. So those things make us richer as a community in the many ways that, again, create this great place to live that I get to go off and play in 6 more months.
Michael, you want to share something?
Thank you, Supervisors and Supervisor Acosta. Just to complete my answer to you, Supervisor Bennett, too, and I want to wrap the fiscal piece of this, too, because those are wonderful services we've talked about, but none of that happens if you don't have the right fiscal managers to do that. No money, no mission. And what the counties do is complex. Understanding the funding streams, how to claim for it, how to bill for it, how to report it, collect it, all those things are very complex across all these different departments. And so it's just a huge tribute to the fiscal teams that we have in all the departments and ours as well, and certainly the auditor controller and their great high standard that they have. So you have to look at all those things together. That's the last thing I'd say.
Well, I just want to share, too, as I mentioned earlier this afternoon, that the budget is a roadmap. A roadmap that guides us throughout the year, and that guide can share alternatives and to which way we're going and make sure that the money is spent wisely. This year, as we mentioned before, we have a lot of state and federal mandates, and the different agencies, the healthcare agency, the the behavioral health, we have probation, and we have the hospitals, VCMC, Santa Paula. We have numerous other mandates that we have to comply with. And many agencies have those mandates, and I think they're complying and working diligently, as mentioned up there in bullet number 2. So I really want to thank the management team, and Catherine did a good job. And I'm sure that Paul's probably watching you and said, oh, my God, I wish I would have been there to do that. Anyway, you're doing a great job. Probably not. He's out there playing golf.
Hiking or having some fun.
And also, especially, I want to thank the almost nearly 9,000 employees, that we have here in the county. Our agency managers, our supervisors, our foremen, our individuals that make this great machine go, and I think it's extremely important. And I personally want to commend all of you for the excellent work that you're doing.
Can I say one more thing? I know I gave Supervisor Long and Mr. Powers bad time saying this meeting's got to last an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. You can't just pass because there was some articles out, all of a sudden you pass a budget for whatever and it goes like that. And I think a lot of people don't realize, the public probably doesn't realize how many hours and hours the supervisors
That's right.
dealing with the CEO's office, Catherine, have gone through and understanding this budget. Sometimes it looks like, well, they passed a $2 billion budget just like that with all this stuff. But I was saying that we got to spend hours so people think you're spending all the time. But it is. We do spend a lot of time with that, and I do appreciate the time that Mr. Powers and the rest of the group are willing to put in to educate us and make sure we know every detail about what's going on, and then you're willing to do that. So it is important, I think, that everybody understands what goes into this budget.
Michael?
Thank you, Supervisor. And that's the thought of spreading out the budget presentations. This would be a lot to cram into one day with 26 department presentations. If you spread it out, you have more time to hear it and think about it.
Thank you, Supervisor. We're okay? So that's the end of the Monday evening public testimony. And now the budget deliberation for Monday evening, June 20th or later. Before deliberation begins, we adopt the recommended budget adjustments under Exhibit A as follows: that the budget adjustments consisting of appropriations, revenues, permanent positions, as summarized on separate pages, such as Exhibit A, thereby are adopted for inclusion in this budget. And now we have deliberation on the general fund and non-general funds. Any deliberation from the board? Okay, so we need a motion. Motion by Supervisor Bennett, and
hopefully
a
we
second
can
by
get rid of those word straw votes
Supervisor
and all
Foy.
that kind of stuff out of from going forward.
So let's vote. Yes. Okay, so that's adopted. Thank you. And now I'm going to close the public hearing. And now we're going to adopt the fiscal year 2016-17 budget resolutions. The motion is to adopt a budget resolution, includes adoption of the GAN limit, Proposition 4 resolution, and Laura's Law resolution as follows. 1, move approval of the resolution adopting the Ventura County General Fund and other funds, budgets for fiscal year 2016, the GAN limit, Proposition 4 resolution, and Laura's Law resolution. Do we take one at a time? So we're going to need a motion for? Okay, we've got a motion and a second, Kathy Long and Peter Foy. And yes on my part. Okay. And that's adopted. And item number 2 is move approval of the resolution adopting the budget for the Ventura County Fire Protection District for fiscal year 2016-17. So we need a motion.
I don't know about that fire department. What do you think?
Is the fire chief here?
He's out there.
And mine is yes. And that's adopted. Item number 3, move approval of the resolution adopting the budget for the Ventura County Watershed Protection District for fiscal year 2016 and 17. And we need a motion. Got a motion and a second. Steve Bennett and Kathy Long, and I vote yes. And that's adopted.
We're not voting any GSA people or that kind of.
That's all been
Director, okay.
GSA and everybody's done. The final board comments. No comments?
What can we say?
Then we're done. And thank you, and we're adjourned.
Well,
Thank you.
just real quick, I know this is your last budget. Congratulations
right.
on all the years, and thanks for all the great advice, all the great stuff you did, so.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you so much. And thank you for the team, and also, Brian, thank you for the dinner. Thank you so much. We're adjourned.
Got some